Hello, and thank you for stopping by. This series is going to be called Reuse It, where we emphasize learning, not being an expert or anything like that, but learning and exploring and getting into IT using affordable resources that you have available to you. A lot of people think that you need to have a fancy computer or expensive things or spend a lot of money to get into IT, and it's just not the case. I want people to know that you can use older hardware and it is perfectly suitable for learning. As a matter of fact, it might be something that you have to learn more to get working the way you want. Case in point, I mean, I'm recording this on a X58 chipset. So for some of you want to know, I believe that's from 2008. Yeah, 2008. Yeah, yeah. This thing is almost old enough to drive. And when it turns 21, which it will, pretty sure it'll last that long. I'm gonna get. We're gonna go out drinking together. It's gonna be great. But anyway, what I want everyone to realize is that IT, especially Windows, which in my opinion is what you need to learn. Yes, Linux and all these things are nice and things, but nothing comes close to what Active Directory, GPOs, and the enterprise level of what Microsoft does. And there are different ways of, doing all of these things. But what we're going to do here is we're going to explore Microsoft, and we're going to just introduce ourselves to topics. We're not going to consider ourselves subject matter experts. We're not going to be doing security hardening. That's for people. I mean, that's something where you really should go learn, get trained, certified. What we are going to do here is dabble and play and explore, and we're going to also be cheap. We're not going to go spend money, right, on learning, which is a lot of times what is a barrier of entry, especially for something like IT, because you would be like, oh, it's so expensive. How do I get, how do I learn a server if I don't have a server? Well, I am doing this on a, believe it or not, you look right here, it is a Mac Pro 5 from 2010. Okay, so you don't need something new and fancy. I've got 24 gigs of RAM. I'm slowly expanding it. It is ECC RAM, so you have to have the timings all have to be the same. And I have been slowly finding 8 gig RAM sticks, the same brand. I just my preference, um, and getting them installed. I do plan on maxing this out at some point. I believe you can go over 120 gigs of RAM, even from a machine back then. That's absolutely impressive. Um, my desktop is similar in that way. Like the specs officially tell you the max is 24 gigs, but it's actually 48. Um, Xeons are pretty cool that way, and this is a dual Xeon Mac, so uh, it for those you don't know, when this is a remote desktop, uh, but you can come here and we'll get a little bit more information. So I have 15 effective cores, 24 gigs, and then I have, as you can see here, a few hard drives installed. So what this is I do have some things installed like Firefox and things on another account and things like that. But for the most part, what we have is I have, of course, the Boot Camp drive because OS X is still installed on here. It's actually kind of important for certain things. Then I have an extra data drive that is NTFS. Then it's a 4 terabyte drive, I believe. Then I have an REFS drive, and we will go into that. But essentially, REFS is you only see it in workstation and servers. You don't even see it on Windows Pro. You used to, I believe, to, but then they took that away, and now it's only in workstation. And it's not what people think it is. And I've been seeing a lot of people in videos. That's why we're going to go into this kind of basic stuff. Is where, using REFS, and they want to use it as like a main file storage for small text files and things. And that's really like if you read the documentation on REFS, um, it's not optimized for that. But it will tell you, like, you don't lose data when you use REFS. It's amazing. It's really, really good at what it does, and it's even better at having virtual drives for VMs. Like it's meant for virtual drives. So I even have like my all my ISOs on here. This is a virtual drive that exists on this REFS drive. So I have a 12 terabyte drive that is my REFS drive. I have a 4 terabyte NTFS drive, and then I have a boot camp drive, of course, which is my OS and things. I could get a little bit of performance boost from going SSD, but like I said, cheap. I'd rather have storage, and don't really need it to be super fast right now. And I can always put a SSD in there and then run certain VMs on that, and it will be, faster anyway. But so as you can see here, it's pretty basic. You don't need anything crazy. I am running Server Data Center 2019. I had to and you can't just install that. So I had to go to Boot Camp, then Windows 7 only for the specific drivers because you will not just get them to install or find them essentially from Apple. Or I mean you could, but it's just much easier to do a Boot Camp install, and then to keep OS X on there. And for this setup anyway. But then I had to install Windows 7, and then from 7 I could get to 2019, which is what this is running. It does have wireless. I had to enable that. That's because the built-in Ethernet doesn't work on 29 server not 2019. It did on Windows 7, not server not, but not 2019. So that's probably something I will actually make a video on exploring, right? Because this is going to be about learning together. But essentially, I just want to really stress that it's not hard or expensive to start learning. And when it comes to Microsoft, there'll be channels like me exist, right? But Microsoft Learn is free. Now you don't get certifications; you got to pay for that, right? But you can get all the training to get that certification in here for free, and you can anything and everything Microsoft makes. If you are actually going to school and you are have a .edu and you're a registered student and everything, um, this not only is free, but they give you licenses for free, operating systems free, software for free. Microsoft wants you to learn this. So if you're in college or high school, yeah, I believe it applies to high school as well. Uh, you can get started learning all of this, right? And you name it. You come in here and you choose a topic, and they've got a path here, right? And we can even go Windows Server, right? And then you can come in here and you can learn, right? And this is I just cannot this is amazing. Okay, if you take the time to do one of these a day, you will know so much. You will be so far ahead of a lot of the professionals I work with, and they don't even know this exists. They want to gatekeep and make it seem no. Just go here, start your own path. If even if you're currently in IT, and you're like, hey, I want to branch out. Well, just come in here and start doing these modules. Because these are absolutely amazing. Like right now, all this is going to be a Hyper-V host, and we are going to then um, learn basic Hyper-V stuff and Windows Server administration and also networking and other things using Hyper-V. All right, and then maybe we'll make a channel, a thing to where I install other V hosts and just do the comparison so you can see what it's like, right? But for now, we're gonna do Windows. All right. Now, mine does have some limitations. Like I don't know how well Docker would work on. We'll have to try, but we can definitely do basic learning here, right? So all of these are worth absolutely going through. And you can pick it, you can go through Microsoft's recommendations, or you can build your own. So, uh, you have to really use your resources that are just that they're available. I mean, you could even go to the library if you had to, and then use a computer at the library to learn this. I'm just saying, like, there's nothing holding you back. Microsoft really does want you to learn their products, and their pricing scheme is changing. And if you also learn how Windows Server works as a technician, you can be compliant. Because the number one thing, I will say this, the number one thing I see, because this is a learning channel, right? And this is Data Center Edition, and it will activate the VMs that we're going to put on here, right? They'll get activated. But even that, you have a limited. You're technically you when you buy different versions, you can buy a version of Data Center Edition that automatically comes with 50 users per server or 5 users. I believe 5 is the default. And we'll explore that together. But this is very important to know because Windows will let you make as many as you want. The server is not going to say no. What they want you to do, what you're supposed to also do, is buy like, CALs, right? User CALs, which is a completely different thing that you buy and you keep on record saying that, hey, I purchased the appropriate licenses for the number of users, right? So there's the things that we're not going to be exploring in this channel because you're not, it's really just not going to go down that route. But I will have, I think, another series on the more professional side of little things, especially if you're coming in, you're auditing, or you're trying to fix, or trying to see what's going there, or you're trying to get someone up to compliance, right? Just for billing, because if Microsoft doesn't audit, they know they. I'll tell you this: I've been through two when I worked at an MSP for our clients that went through it, and if Microsoft asks or starts that, they know. They know how they've been knowing, and so they just want you to pay up and be honest, and it can be very expensive, right? So, but as a student, you get Data Center Edition for free. It's free. You can install it on your machine, and then what I say is keep it to 5 users for your learning experience. Just keep it to five. We can simulate different things, but that's what we're going to do here. We're going to, and maybe a little bit more because sometimes we'll do more advanced or intermediate, I guess, Active Directory things where we're going to need users and computers and things like that, or else it doesn't thing. But for the most part, it's just going to be basic introduction. So know what we call subject matter experts, SMEs. You'll hear this term in the industry. That you're a SME, because that happens actually a lot. I am not a SME. I I have my own technology consulting company and small MSP. I touch so much different technology that's what I do. I mean, that's why I am able to do what I do. But there's a benefit to becoming a SME. And if you really like Microsoft, which I really do recommend to learn, like above Linux, it does Linux. WSL, it's 98% efficient. So just trust me. Learn Windows, learn PowerShell, learn learn this and learn it for free because I mean the amount of resources that are available I cannot stress is just amazing. And so right here, as you can see, it tells us what we have. We have an activated server. Oh, we've got some things here. What's going on here? Migrations can be enabled, but it's this is not on domain. And there's things where we might do that in the future. Play around with making a do that, but you typically don't do your physical vhost. That does not go into your company domain. There's arguments for and against, and it just depends on the setup. But that's also what we'll go into later on. But essentially, there's only thing I had to install on here was my tools. I've got some remote tools. I got some security tools like Windows Defender. I do pay for Windows Defender. I think it's a good product. And other than that, it's pretty basic. And so that's what this channel I think is going to really be about. And for our first little introduction here, we're going to actually install what I'm going to call my lab router because that's the first thing I like to do, believe it or not, is let's simulate being a little tiny office where you have to learn and set up, a small tiny office that's using a server. It could be a regulated industry like CPA, or maybe a small dental clinic, or whatever it is, right? They want to use Windows, right? So we're going to mimic that kind of, all right? Because this is not just going to be Windows. This is going to be, let's learn basic IT stuff that you're going to be doing, right? And one of the first things you'll do is, like, whenever you boot a Windows server, it launches your dashboard for Server Manager, right? And it lets you know if you've got any issues and what's going on. And we can just click Hyper-V here, um, and it'll tell you if you've got things there. But we're good. We're good here. So we can go to Tool and we can say Hyper-V Manager. And then, because we're going to be doing that a lot, let's just go ahead and pin that. You're also going to notice I'm not going to really try to edit. I'm going to keep my mistakes, my blunders. I think being human is much easier when it comes to learning, because you're showing that it does. You could be doing. I've been doing this for 16 years, and um, you can't know everything. Einstein, I even think, said, like, it's kind of, or something, that weird quote where, why memorize something when you can look it up, which unfortunately is very common. I mean, if you got good Google food, believe it or not, you can get into IT that way. Um, Now there are industries where you'll do tests with no access to the internet, and yeah, that's a completely different ballpark. But this, we're going to be doing Google searches. We're going to be doing Microsoft Learn stuff to learn together, and in general, it's going to be a good time, I think. So let's just create a office network that we can go here. So right now, virtual switches is going to be the first thing that I pop up, and the reason I'm doing this is because I want to simulate having a external network, which this currently has. As you can see here, there's Wi-Fi network switch. It says, what is it? It's an external. It's connected directly to that my Wi-Fi adapter there. You do have to do special things to enable Wi-Fi in Windows Server, because normally you wouldn't be doing that. But like I said, we're learning here, and this is not a perfect setup. This is a learning setup. Also, this Mac can get very loud, so having it, tucked away somewhere with wire, much simpler, right? Um, right, and then there is a USB adapter if I use that. But so essentially, this is going to be our ISP, right? They're going to be providing our internet, and then we are going to simulate having our router, and then our other VMs will exist on the switch there. So what we have to do actually is create a new virtual switch. And right here, when it says it right here, what is this going to do? External creates a virtual switch that bridges the physical. When they say bridge, it just means it's going to it's sharing that data ability, right? Internal, it says, what can this do? Well, it only runs on this physical vhost. So if you connect it to that, it can't see anything outside of this vhost without some kind of router, right? And then, just like any other network, it can get out, right? And then private is, you can use this for management machines, secure VM. You could have like special VMs doing things, and you do not want them doing networking, things like that. And so it just comes down to that. But what we are going to do is an internal switch, and we're going to call this lab switch, or lab 01. All right, and this is going to be internal office switch, right? It represents having, because you can plug as many of these as you want. That's what's nice about Hyper-V. It doesn't really care. And then we're leaving this right here. Now, more advanced things later on, you can do VLAN tagging if you had this plugged into advanced thing, and then but that's advanced networking and stuff like that. But that is possible to do. But we're doing basic stuff here, so we're doing internal, and we're just going to create one. All right. So now we've got our ISP and our office, set up, right? So let's create a new virtual machine. So I right click there. There's also tons of ways. So you can right click there, action, I mean, you can do it with PowerShell, which will probably do things because it is very good to learn command for Windows Server Core, which is one of the versions we'll install where you have no GUI at all. It's just terminal-based commands, and it's incredibly efficient. And Windows Server Core is also, I believe, free for certain things. So, like, if Windows does have a version of Windows that you can do a lot with, you just don't get their UI. So, learn the other way, right? Um, well, we're gonna create our router here, right? So we're gonna go new virtual machine. Now I use pfSense. I love pfSense. I mean, I'm gonna be having an entire thing on pfSense. Love pfSense, and I'm gonna want this to be stored in a different place than my default one. Now REFS, like I said, it loves virtual drives. It's meant for it. Learning lab, and we're gonna put it in there. All right. Now, this is where you would choose generation 1, generation 2. Now, this is where we're using older hardware. We're like what we're doing here. If you're limited to older hardware, probably not going to be able to do some of the generation 2. It can get kind of iffy. Now, this does have you. This one can, but even then, this can get a little dicey with the older stuff. So we're gonna just do generation 1 for this one. Now, this wizard here, like I said, look how easy Microsoft makes making a VM. Until you install Hyper-V as a role, and then now we're just making a VM here, right? And we're going to go over installing Hyper-V as a role. But I want to say when this thing boots up, it has to have a minimum of 512. And then I'm going to say use dynamic, and what that means is it has the ability to assign more or less based on what it needs, right? And when you have limited resources, it's kind of important. Um, and it's just, yeah, that's the benefit of using virtual machines. And now we're going to say this one, all right, this one initially is connected to, we're going to go the internet, right? Wi-Fi. And then next, now this is where it asks you, like, how big of a hard drive do you want to do? And where do we want to put it? And also right here, this VDHX, you'll notice that. That's Microsoft's expanding format so that it it'll pretend there's a 4 terabyte drive there, but it only uses the amount of data that's there, right? And we don't need near this much for our router here because it absolutely doesn't need that. As a matter of fact, we'll just do like 20 gigs. And it's going to put it in that location that I told it to, right? And then that's it. Now we're going to say use a ISO from somewhere. Now I've got mine. You can download them from all kinds of places, but mine would be right here. And now it's creating this VM. Now we just, because it is a router, we just have to make some small tweaks here, right? We right click on the VM. You'll notice that it's Windows, so a lot of right clicking gets you to what you want to do. As you learn Windows, you'll see that. But as you can see here, this gives us a breakdown of what we have going on. So it tells us 512, 512. Now, I don't want it to be able to use that much RAM. It doesn't need to use that much RAM. That's plenty for this machine. And we're going to say this is where, depending on, we'll get into that later, but you can make the machine prioritize certain VMs over others. So like maybe your domain controller or something, or things that you need to always have resources. You can say, hey, I'm a little bit more important than the other guys. So like make sure that I don't give up my RAM that I'm using versus everyone else. And then we can also come in here and we can say, well, what kind of processors do we have here? Now, I like to have at least 2 cores because for installing, we can drop it back down to 1 core after which you can do, but for installing and stuff like that, at least two. And then the big thing here is network stuff. So we're going to need more than one network controller for this to be a router, right? It's got to connect two different networks, so it's got to have two connections. And right now it's connected to my Wi-Fi, which is essentially its ISP. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say add hardware. I want to add a network adapter. And it asks me which switch. Now this one is our ISP, which is Wi-Fi. This one we say is our lab. This represents the inside of the network, right? Now we've got that, and we say apply. If you double click, you'll see right here what we got. We'll hit start, and just like that, the process of begins. This it really is pretty quick and easy when it comes to basic Hyper-V stuff. So I mean, this is why I really encourage you to just do it. Just hop in there, get something. It doesn't have to be crazy fast. Doesn't have to be crazy new, and just start playing with it and installing things and breaking things and figuring out, well, if I change this, what's it going to do? Because this is the best time to break something. You know, when you're learning. Um, like one of my tests, I'll know whether or not you use RDP and do this a lot because people won't know how to do a Control Alt Delete to a VM that's inside of RDP because you can't do Control Alt Delete, right? It's and so there's like keyboard shortcuts. So it's Control Alt End, believe it or not, and that sends the Control Alt Delete to the machines you want. You can also do actions here, and that's what this is also is right here, right? So basic things right here. You have Control Alt Delete, stops. Your power functions essentially. You can also pause these things. This is for creating snapshots or checkpoints, what they call it here, which is essentially a snapshot that you go back to a state. We're gonna default. We're gonna go auto. See, this is also why I like pfSense. Man, it's just boo. Let's go. But as you can see, this is just normal HDD. Honestly, spending a lot of money on a nice SDD or whatnot, it's cool, but you're not going to get a 12 terabyte drive for nothing. A lot of all this stuff I get is from people that throw it away because I do e-cycling. And when I do e-cycling, I'm the one that if I like it, then I'm going to keep it instead of throwing it away, or not throwing it away, but taking it to an actual e-cycle vendors because I've got a couple places I take things to here that I know for a fact that they'll either um, take the parts out or they do what they're supposed to. That or I build the machine into a Linux machine, especially like the older iMacs and stuff. You turn them into a Linux machine or something, and give them to kids or something like that. But I use stuff all the time, all the time. It's great for learning because you can take this from here and then you can actually pay for a VM in a cloud somewhere or something like that. Um, no, we're not going to worry about that for now. We're going to go ahead and reboot. All right, now this is also what I like to do. So we're going to pretend now this pfSense, believe it or not, by default you're not. You will be able to use this because this is essentially like having a build you made yourself where you could have a keyboard and an actual terminal, but most of these routers in the real world, that's not the way it works. It's going to be a serial connection. You're going to have the baud rate set up, and then you can do some settings from there. But there is actually no way to get into pfSense on the ISP on your WAN side by default. You need to be plugged in from the other side. Oops, I forgot to do that. So let's just do this so it doesn't matter. I'm going to turn it off. Look at that. Why? Because it's a VM and I can do that. And I'm going to say get rid of that DVD drive. So eject it. See, I'm not going to edit that out. Everyone makes mistakes and forgets to do things. So now, because it is set to boot, it's set to boot the ISO, right? Now we start it up again. And now it's going to boot to the one we installed. But while that's happening, we're going to need a VM to be able to log into that machine to simulate having to set it up the way you would. So let's now create our workstation. So UKS Lab 01. Everyone has their own different folder structures. You choose your own. You might have company policy. You might do whatever you want to do. That's actually a really that is a key thing. Is if you do it yourself. Let's see here. We're not doing VLANs right now. WAN interface is on pfSense. It'll try to do auto detection if there's actual connections. Um, and but I know it's going to be hardware 01. And then that is my going to be LAN. Yes. So this pfSense. All right. So now we're making another one, generation 1. Startup for this one, yeah, we're gonna go with at least a gig to start, and we're gonna say this one is connected to Lab 01. It is not connected to the Wi-Fi, so it could not get out to the internet right now without the pfSense, and we'll simulate that. But and so for this one, yeah, 120 gig is fine because, like I said, it'll dynamically expand. Uh, we're gonna go and we're gonna say, what do we want to use? And we want to use. Wait, nope, that requires a newer version. Can't use that one. Okay. Now, just like before, so here we go. Look at our pfSense is running. It's telling us we grabbed our IP address, and of course, it does do IPv6 by default. Which as things go on, you need to learn IPv6, people. Um, and then of course, it's your generic. Everyone does the one just gonna say, and the DHCP is enabled by default with this basic setup there. But so now what we're going to do is we're going to make some small changes to this one, just like we did the other one. We're going to say, hey, I want you to use a minimum of a gig, like bare minimum. Oh, my numlock. Minimum of a gig, and I don't want you for this workstation. I don't want you going past 4 gigs. Once again, I need 2 cores. Most things don't use more than 2 cores. You really don't need that unless it's a server or some kind of specific thing. And that should be it. All right, and now so now, like I said, this is how pretty quick and easy. Now I mean, it doesn't take much. Once you get the Hyper-V enrolled, we'll just stay in Hyper-V and start playing with Hyper-V. And what we're doing here, I'm showing you like this is how quick it is and easy it is to set up a tiny little lab and it's just to learn. Maybe all you want to do is learn pfSense. Maybe it's not even Windows right now. Well, you can do that in here, and you can do it for free. And it's a good power, and because you're using Hyper-V, you're learning a skill just because, right? And it's absolutely, I think, important. You can also install Hyper-V. You don't have to have Windows Server. You can install Hyper-V on a desktop. You absolutely can. There are certain things it won't do because that's what Microsoft makes servers do. But you can do it to learn. Let's see what we got here. There goes Fedora. Do do do. So, and then as you can see here, too, let's look. Let's see what this tells us. Hey, how much is being used? 512 right now. What's our networking information? Oh, that's kind of useful, isn't it? This is for advanced data center stuff, but you can make this for uptime and stuff like that. Um, you can replicate the VM on another vhost. Make sure it never goes down. You would do that for like AD or DNS and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, so now we can close this guy right here. And this it is showing its speed here. You know, it would be faster on SSDs for this, but it's fine. It's fine now. We're just gonna install. Now, as you can see right there, it is showing that we have internet. Now, mind you, this is a VM going through another VM going through a bridged wireless in adapter. Let's see what we can get. Versus the vhost itself. And yes, I have Firefox on my vhost for learning. I would not install browsers or browse the web on a vhost normally. But learning is different, right? So our host here. All right, that's not bad. Let's see what this gets. Definitely some latency. Hmm. It might be because it's installed. We've got it going into it. Yep, installer's running. Let's finish installing. Now Fedora, of course, these are all of them are different. You know, it's perfectly fine. Well, let's see. What's that putting our load at? Nothing. All right. Sorry. Look at me. Work never ends even while I'm doing this. But Kyle, that's probably kind of boring for you guys. But that's not too bad, right? So, but as you can see here, it doesn't take much. You can do more than you think with you know cheap free stuff. Uh, and the big obstacle is just doing it and realizing that you don't have to. A lot of people think, oh, I've got to spend money, or I have to only learn Linux and all this stuff. Well, that'd be cool and all, but just trust me, you're gonna want to learn Windows Server. And as VMs become more and more how everything's done, you are gonna want to know Hyper-V, and and of course there are other um, ones that are just as good, and some of them that do things way better than Microsoft, right? It really does depend on what you do, like hardware pass through and things like that. Microsoft just isn't there like the others. But as far as creating a enterprise network or creating a setup for a small office, well, Hyper-V can be incredibly useful, especially for creating even remote machines that for users to use, which we'll get into. I mean, there's lots of things you can do with this, and to use it to your advantage. Because now servers that you get at offices, if you buy the right license, well, you can put Hyper-V on it, and then if you're not running if you're running nothing but Linux machines, well, that's not against Microsoft. So you're under the user account, and those are Linux machines, right? It's whenever you are using the Windows stuff that it kind of gets important. So that's why I'd say if you are a student, just sign up for Microsoft Learn, get your free Windows keys, install the operating system, and play with it. Learn it. Use the command line. Get find the little nuances because that I think is uh, gonna show you that the IT, the barrier of entry, is not what people think it is. And it's not. It's not. Oh, everyone's got to be. I got to be in the terminal, and if I don't know all the commands, right, then in there, and you know, no, like there are some things that yes, you only can do with the terminal, and like Windows Server Core, there is no UI, right? But then there are things where you have UI tools that can connect to those servers, right? You can connect, you can create server administration tools that connect to other machines running things like Active Directory, right? So, and we'll do that. We'll simulate that at some point for learning. But for now, this is what we got going on. It's as you can see right here, it's using all 4 gigs, and it's gonna take this one a little while because this is where it is a standard HDD. But thank you for stopping by this brief video. Not brief video, but just thank you for stopping by my first video here. Like I said, this is going to be more of just learning, not expert stuff, not deep diving. This is like touching and networking and firewalls and playing with Windows Server and seeing what the different roles do, right? And creating virtual networks. I mean, this is very much a thing. Having virtual routers is absolutely a thing in the real IT world. I mean, you'll have hosts that are set up for this that have fiber optic connections for each one of these things, and you're running a virtual router, not a physical one. So, we're going to do all kinds of different things here. But like I said, the goal is just going to be learning things, not to be schmees, but to learn, to be curious, to use free, recycled, or very cheap hardware, in our learning experiences. And that's going to be the kind of like the goal of this series, I think. And then I'll think of course, we'll have different series for different things, and have y'all's feedback. But I kind of want to do some almost streaming esque, no edits to show blunders and mistakes. We'll see. But yeah, thank you.